This conference will now be recorded.
Welcome to the Thoughtful Classroom webinar, From Homework to Home Learning. While the recent pandemic has changed the world dramatically and the world of education dramatically, I think that this makes this presentation, From Homework to Home Learning, an important, timely, and relevant one for all educators. My name is Harvey Silver. I'm president of Silver Strong and Associates and founder of the Thoughtful Education Press. With me today is my partner and good friend, Matthew Perini, Senior Director of Content Development at Silver Strong and Associates. There's two ways of looking at challenges. Challenges can be seen as obstacles that stand in the way, or they can be seen as opportunities. And many school districts during this time have overcome many of the obstacles to provide meaningful home learning to their students. Obstacles like, how do we feed our children? How do we make sure everyone has a computer? How do we make sure that parents know how to get online and students know how to get to use the technology that we're using, and designing lessons? And yes, many of the schools have used their time to overcome these obstacles and have arranged and got their schools working. But this really is an opportunity, and I want you to think about it. There are three kinds of opportunities that can take place. One, more than ever, we're working with parents. We're establishing a relationship with families that have a better understanding of what it means to educate their child. And so that's an opportunity that we need to take advantage of. A second opportunity is the opportunity to help students become more self-directed, to become better thinkers, to develop greater fluency with technology, and be an active part in their learning process. And this is also an opportunity to grow teachers' practice, to develop their repertoire of instructional design and delivery. So the goal of Thoughtful Classroom is to make From Homework to Home Learning an opportunity for developing successful schools. The mission of the Thoughtful Classroom has always been this. It's been to help schools develop simple and deep solutions to challenges that stand in the way of student learning. And that's why I believe this is so important, homework to home learning, more than ever before. If you visit a Thoughtful Classroom, one of the things that you'll notice in every classroom and in every school, it focuses on one essential ingredient. It's all about the learning. And that's the primary focus of what the Thoughtful Classroom and Homework to Home Learning is about. Now, in this presentation, we're going to address three essential questions. One is, what is the difference between homework and home learning? A second question that's critical, why is this more important now than ever before? And third is, how can we make it happen for our teachers and our students? So let's begin looking at our first question. What is the difference between homework? Yes, homework is often seen as something that's a chore by students, something to get over with. As one student said, something that stands in the way sometimes of the things that I like to do, to really meaningful homework. And here's an example of what we mean by home learning. I know I've learned something well when I immediately know the answer, can explain it to someone else. This week I've learned about fractured fairy tales. I watched a video explaining what it is and read a couple of books on fractured fairy tales. Then every day I mapped out one part of my own fractured fairy tale. First, I picked out my main characters and setting. Then I picked out a problem and a solution. For social studies, I used window notes to help me learn about colonial times. I also learned I could read a whole chapter book in one day. What an amazing feat. I still miss my teachers, my friends, and soccer team. So that's a product, a performance of what we mean by home learning. So how did this occur? What took place in the school's design? And basically, there are two shifts when it comes to home learning that are really critical. One shift is less focus on content coverage, but more focus on thinking. And when you look at the work of Lily, a student that we just saw, you see that she's really engaged in thinking and mapping out her product and her performance. A second shift is less busy work and more focus on engagement. These are two simple shifts that every teacher can make, and we can show you how to make those shifts. to really make a difference in terms of student learning. Now, why is this so critical? In speaking to many of the schools that we work with, they've been asking questions like these. One, how do we create effective, engaging, and equitable home learning experiences? And you can see from the work of Lily that we shared with you, a third grader, that there was a clear learning outcome in terms of story structure, and it was an effective set of lessons to lead it to that. You could see that she was really engaged because she had a chance to choose what she was doing. She was challenged. It used curiosity. And equitable, but I mean equitable, is that we provide the necessary activities and scaffolding so that Lily could be successful. A second question that schools are asking themselves is, how do we escape the busy work trap and really focus on the thinking? And Lily is engaged in thinking. She's using tools like window notes to prepare her for doing a compare and contrast activity between colonial times and what times are like today. A third question that they're asking is, how do we maximize school and family collaboration to support student learning? How do we get greater connections between the school, the work, and the community so that we have a powerful, effective triangle between the school, the family, and the student in terms of promoting learning? And that really is the goal of homework, from homework to home learning, to put the learning into the work that we ask students to engage in. So let's look at our next question, our third question. And I turn this over to Matthew Perini.
Thank you, Harvey. I think you really did a nice job of laying out the what and the why and connecting it to the power of the kind of work students can produce if we really focus on this idea of moving from homework to home learning. And as you said, that leaves our third question. And this really is the most important question of all. It's the question of how. How are we going to make this kind of change, this kind of improvement for our teachers, for our students, and across our school, especially with all the other challenges we're wrestling with? Makes the question of how more important than ever, because we know that if this is not manageable, then it will not work. And this is so important to the work of the thoughtful classroom. We've been partnering with schools for over 40 years, and this question of how has always been at the center of our work. And we really help schools focus on the how. We really help schools focus on how to make it manageable, and in three specific ways. And the first is really one of the hallmarks of our work. We provide your team with simple, practical tools that teachers and leaders can use tomorrow to make these shifts. And we'll show you what those look like a little bit later in the presentation. Second thing is, we insist that thinking this way is not one more thing. It's really about integrating, taking tools that will really help students become more engaged and help students think more actively about content, and using them with whatever content or instructional purposes you're already moving towards. Not one more thing, but how to make what you're already working on more engaging and create more thinking for the student. And the last is support. As I said, and as Harvey said, 40 years of building partnerships. It is a partnership that is focused on help and support, and we will provide the necessary support for your teachers and leaders, of course, but more than that, the support that students and families need, right? And this is a time where, as Harvey mentioned, we have an opportunity to build a stronger relationship with our families than ever before. And we can help you with that so that home learning becomes part of our way of thinking and our community's way of thinking. So let's start with that first way we really make this process manageable, and that's providing simple and practical tools for you and your team. And we've been the leaders in the development of instructional tools for quite a while now. And what you're looking at here is our line of books, Tools for Today's Educators. And this is an award-winning series, but the award that these books win most consistently is the Teacher's Choice Award. And the reason that these books always win the Teacher's Choice Award is because the tools inside are classroom ready. A teacher can use them tomorrow. They're easy to integrate into your lessons, into your instructional approach, and they really promote thinking and engagement. They really help create those two shifts that Harvey highlighted in the beginning of this session. So let's take a quick look at what we mean by tools, and more specifically and importantly at this moment, tools that are being used with home learning designs that with the impact of improving the quality of student thinking and keeping students more actively engaged in the learning. So here's a simple tool that teachers can use to frame content and frame content in a way that creates a little bit of controversy, a little bit of debatability right away. And it's so simple. It's called more alike or different. Notice when we ask students, are things more alike or more different? It's a forced choice. And that's where that little bit of controversy comes from. I've got to take a position. Of course, we also want to make sure that we're building the evidence habit. When you choose more alike or different, can you defend your position with evidence? And it challenges and teaches students how to keep two ideas in their mind at the same time, which is a hallmark of a great thinker. And look how simple it can be. We can start with more alike or different, gloves and mittens, right? This works in a primary grade classroom. And students really have to think, right? Because they start to think about what they're made of. They start to think about how they're designed. And they start to think about this important concept, form and function. Why does one have fingers, whereas the other has one piece of material that covers all the fingers? What's going on? Are they more alike or more different? Look at all the ways we can use this to frame content to get students actively engaged in thinking. I love this example, chess and football, right? You pose that question to students, and at first, most students immediately say, well, they're more different, right? Because one is the ultimate physical sport, the other is just two players, and it's mostly happening in the mind. Then you start to think about them, right? They both take a whole lot of strategy, and they're both about advancing on an opponent's goal. And students start to see things differently. And many students start to say, well, maybe they're more similar. But look what we can do. Insects and spiders, fairy tales and fables, bacteria and viruses, whatever content we're working on, this simple frame engages students. I love this last example. Two iconic literary rebels, one from the 16th century, one from the 20th century. Hamlet and Holden Caulfield from The Catcher in the Rye. Are they more alike or more different? That's how you can engage students in deeper thinking. Here's another tool. Again, notice what we're asking students to do in a home learning environment. This is a kindergartner, and this teacher has used home learning as an opportunity to teach kindergartners one of the most important skills they can possibly develop that will help them through their whole academic careers, how to organize their ideas. This is a kindergartner who's learning the structure of an argument with a tool called Map It Out. It provides the organizers and the thinking skills that students need to structure arguments, to structure explanations, to structure narratives, to structure sequences, all the kinds of writing genres we're asking students to work in, structuring their thinking. And notice, this kindergartner understands that a good argument has a claim. Halloween is the best holiday. It has 3 reasons to support that claim, and it has a conclusion. Really an important skill that we can work on, and Map It Out makes it so much easier for students to think through and organize their ideas. This may be my very favorite of tools for home learning, and it's so simple, and it radically, dramatically increases engagement for students. It's called window notes. It's so simple because all we ask students to do is divide their note-making space up into 4 cells, right? 1 horizontal and 1 vertical line makes 4 panes, like a window. And then we recognize that when students are interacting with content, whether they're doing a reading, whether we're providing an online instruction, whether they're watching a video presentation, we need them to engage with content. And part of that is making notes in a traditional format, right? We want students to collect facts. So many students think notes are just about copying information. Notes are a wonderful opportunity to interact with content. So we also ask students, what are your questions? What are you curious about? We encourage students to make connections because we know that when students can connect new learning to their prior knowledge or their own life experiences, that's how learning sticks. We ask and invite students for their feelings. right? Learning has an affective side as well as a cognitive side, a heart as well as a mind. How are you feeling? What are your reactions to what we're learning? And I love this. This is a third grade student who says, I feel bad for children in the colonial times because they got harsh punishments. Making those connections, personalize the learning. How do we get students actively engaged with the content? It can be as simple as 2 lines on a piece of paper and building a mindset. The last tool I want to show you is called association triangles. This is a tool that one of the biggest challenges teachers have with home learning is, how do I get students to actually be thinking conceptually? How do I move them from activity to little bits of nuggets of information into actually thinking conceptually about the big ideas about what we're learning? And again, simplicity. All this tool is an organizer that has a triangle with 3 spaces. And in those 3 spaces, students have to select, or you can choose 3 critical terms around whatever content we're learning. So these are students who are learning about the Constitution, and this student chose 3 critical academic vocabulary terms: checks and balances, states' rights, and amendments, and wrote those in the corners of the triangle. Then what students have to do is make the connections. They have to write a sentence that connects each of those terms to the other terms and uses both terms in each connecting sentence. So they have to see the connections between states' rights and checks and balances, and amendments and checks and balances, and so on and so forth. And last, students have to create a simple summary. What's the big idea? What are all these terms telling us? What do all these connections that we've made tell us about the Constitution? And look at this summary. This student says, the Constitution is designed to prevent abuse of power, promote compromise among the branches, and protect individual rights. Now, this is a student who has a deep understanding of how the Constitution is designed. And getting students to think conceptually does not have to be such heavy lifting. So the last thing I want to say before I turn it back to Harvey is, we've shown you a few tools, really trying to put an emphasis on tools that are easy to integrate into home learning designs. But, Harvey talked about that busy work trap. That busy work trap is a trap not just for students, but also for teachers. And here's what happens when teachers integrate tools. The busy work trap goes away, because instead of the exhausting ritual of every single day, I've got to come up with new ways to keep students busy or active all day long, I'm empowering my students to take more control of their learning. They become more self-directed. They can engage in thinking for longer periods of time. And now I've got less work to do as opposed to more, because instead of worrying about how I'm going to keep students busy each day, I can actually engage them in real thinking and see their thinking and engagement grow right before my eyes. And that's really the power of a tool. So with that, I'd like to turn it back to you, Harvey, and tell us a little bit about how professional development can be designed.
Well, thank you, Matt, for that clear, concise explanation of what a tool is and how it impacts student learning. I just want to reiterate what Matt has said. It's all about the learning. Notice all of the tools that we shared with you in this presentation is a demonstration of students thinking, and that is simple to use but can have deep impact. In order to learn, one needs to think. Well, what does the initiative look like? We start out by having a conversation about the kinds of challenges that your school or your school district wants to address, and what opportunities you want to bring about from those challenges. And here are some examples of some of the school districts we've worked with, some of the schools we've worked with. And one might be focusing on active engagement. How can we use our tools to increase the level of active engagement of our students? Another is to develop thinking skills, to build key thinking skills like reading for understanding, communicating effectively, both visually and orally and in writing, mathematical problem solving as well. How do we ensure certainly mastery of content and skills so students are not falling behind or just treading water? How do we make sure that those skills that we're teaching, what tools can we use to really demonstrate mastery of those skills? These are critical. How do we adapt our lessons to make home learning more effective? And we can work on lesson design. It really depends on where you want to begin. What specific challenge can we develop and use our tools to address effectively? Once we establish the challenge, we then talk about the deliverables. And one of the deliverables is an online planning session for the district building leaders and instructional leaders to make sure that we've agreed upon the challenge and we share with you the identified tools so that you can be supportive of the teachers and those involved in the professional development opportunity. We'll then make sure that we customize the online PD session for your staff. It can be for all of the staff, it can be a particular segment of the staff, it can be a particular grade level, but we'll make sure that we provide an online session that shows the what, the why, and how to use the tool and how to integrate it into your lesson. But the important thing, you see, this is not a one-shot PD online training. It really is a process. And so the process also includes individual coaching and support. We'll provide the necessary coaching and support for your teachers to make sure that they're clear about how to use the tools. Do they really address the challenges that you're confronted with? And also help you to give feedback to the work that students are producing. In addition, we also provide services like a family tip sheet. You see, we really want to get our families actively involved in learning to understand the tool, the thinking skill that we're working on, and how they can integrate it into their home and how they can support their own children in terms of the learning process. We'll also provide a web-based student presentation that shows how to do the tool. And this is a great help for teachers because what we're showing them here, teachers can ask students to go online, to go to the web-based presentation and look at how to do window notes. So we provide a clear 5-minute explanation of what you need to do and focus on to do the window notes. So as you can see, this is an entire program that really processes and is available 24/7. Teachers can go online, parents can go online and see the webinars that we've produced for you to use to move from homework to home learning. So what's the result? What can you expect as a result of this? One, teachers will be able to provide online instruction that really makes the shift from more thinking to more engagement. And that's what we want to see, more thinking, more engagement. We believe that really is the critical component in moving from homework to home learning. We want to integrate selected tools into our instructional design. And as Matt pointed out, and I've said, these are so easy to use. And once we demonstrate and model the tools for students, they know how to use them and apply them to any content you're presenting. Also, they're appropriate for any grade level. They enhance whatever content you're currently teaching, and that's really critical. And they force a greater collaboration between the school and the families because of our tip sheets, because we're explaining to parents what tools we're using, how to use those tools. Those tools are simple and can have a deep impact on student learning, and parents really know how to make use of them. So our goal is to change, is to address the challenges and make those challenges not just obstacles we have to overcome, but as we said, opportunities. And I think it was best said by John Adams, every problem is an opportunity in disguise. Let's look at the challenges that you're confronted with. Let's really enhance student learning. Let's help them become more self-directed learners, better thinkers, better able to handle the challenges that they're confronted in the future. So please contact us at Thoughtful Classroom. Send us your questions, responses to this presentation. We'd love to hear from you. And thank you very much for attending today's presentation.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.